Hello and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And my guest today is Oscar Hofman once again. Hello, Oscar.
Hi, good to be back.
Well, it's lovely to have you back. And I thought it would be good because I was rereading your excellent book called The Lunar Mansions Guide. So here it is for the audience.
Right, that's it.
Um, and as I was rereading it, I kind of stopped thinking about the lunar mansions themselves, I have to say, because something else grabbed my attention. And it's the reason it grabbed my attention is because it's kind of been in the back of my mind for some time. The idea that it seems that the stories to do with the Zodiac and with many of the constellations that you've highlighted in the book have this inherent theme of the struggle to return home. So the need to overcome the material world and return home to something that is of spirit. So I
Yes,
thought it was good to explore that with you.
yes, that's very strong, and even so strong that you have to watch out not writing the same thing all the time. But yes, that's very much true. That's the basic theme.
For me, it feels like the entire Zodiac is a process of from Aries coming into the world to Pisces returning.
Yes,
So that has, I think, been on my mind for at least the last 6 or 7 years. It's been a while since I've been pondering on this. And
yes.
but actually that's why when I was rereading your book, I thought, yeah, that process is there, it seems, with every single sign. So why do you think that is? Where is this coming from?
Because it's the zodiac and reflected in the 28 mention cycle is a reflection of creation. So that's the whole creative process. So beginning with Aries coming, whoa, the first impulse, and that's the same in the sign and in the constellation or the mention. And what I think is very fascinating is this Pisces symbolism of these two fishes. There's this, so the lunar mansion is very much connected to the stars, and there's a star in the cord that binds these two fishes together. It's called Alphag, and um, these are the two polarities of the world. So if they unite, the world ends, and something new starts. It's of course a cycle, so it and that's absolutely fascinating. I think then you understand why Pisces is the end, the last sign, and the last lunar mention. And that's also a fascinating relationship, of course, between the houses of the sun, which is the zodiac, and the houses of the moon, which is this manzil, that's the Arabic name, or cycle. And it's like the manzil cycle reflects the whole zodiacal creation cycle.
So it's easy to see how Pisces has that reminder. Talk us through how it works with Aries and Taurus, which people might not necessarily be thinking of having inherent themes of the need to return home or to overcome the material aspect of life.
Yeah, well, Aries is of course this ram, and on the back of this ram you have the brothers and sisters, sister and brother, which is the two parts of the soul, and they escape from the bad stepmother, and or the fly on the back of the ram, which has all this power to break out of this material constriction. And but then the sister falls off, and the sister is the more material, more emotional part of the soul, and looks down and falls into the Hellas pond, because he's called Hella, which is the sea of Hella. And I saw this fascinating, because Hella is, of course, I think, the same as Hellas, which is Greece. And where did the materialistic tendency in European culture start? In Hellas. So there's a connection there too, through the words. And then Phrixus, the brother, he flies on. He doesn't look down. So the sea is, of course, the sea of emotion and desire, and being too much attached to earthly things. And then he comes in the land of to his destination, and then he has to sacrifice the ram. Because if he doesn't sacrifice the ram, the process doesn't end. Because you take this Aries impulse to get out, but in the act you have to return it to God, because and that's the golden fleece. That becomes the golden fleece, because that is the realized spiritual, the spiritual quest realized in the world. Phrixus comes to his proper destination, and then the ram, the hide of the ram, is hanging in a which is of course solar. This is the sun, and it hangs in a cave which is dedicated to Aries. Now the sun is exalted in Aries, so there are all these this astrological connections.
It might be good to explain to the audience why it would be that it's the sister who's associated with the sea, and the sea of desire, and rather than the brother. Because if we're talking about one being solar, the other one being lunar, why is it that the lunar qualities are seen as being more linked with the earth, the dimension of this life, rather than the solar principle?
Because the moon is the big symbol of earthly life, which is changing phases and appearance, just like how it is here on Earth, and associated with emotion. Well, emotion is the attachment to Earth is emotional. Well, I think that is the attachment, and to be able to step through it is detaching, and that's what the brother does. And so, well, these are this is the nature of man, to be a mixture of spirit and matter. And in fact, the moon is, of course, only the sun is the sun, only the sun is the spiritual, and the moon is everything else. That's why the lunar mention cycle is so important. But the moon is everything else. Only the sun is God. And that's what we reflect in masculine and feminine, and also in its two parts of the soul, emotional and more detached. And yeah, so it's a necessary reflection of how man was made. And that's, of course, if you in the first book of the Bible, in creation, you have this spirit of God, which and that are the waters, and the spirit of God has to make matter which is completely dead. There's nothing. It has to make it alive, and that's why we have this this split in our souls, because we have spirit coming in matter. And then we have the two levels of spirit and matter. And this is very interesting, I think, and very, very essential, that because spirit and matter cannot just like that connect, because they're so different. Then we have the middle thing, which is the psyche. which is the whole ambivalence and all our feelings and attachment. We can go up or down, and well, we have the choice, and that's the whole process is in the psyche. Therefore, this it's not the only thing in the psyche, but therefore it's the intermediary which is there. Therefore, it's the moon, because the sun is always only God, and there's not. That's the whole reality, and the moon is everything else. So therefore, there are two, but it's also three.
So you give us another example of how it works with another story. So that was a really good one, to Aries, that illustration of this split between the soul and matter, I guess. So give us another example, just so that people get a real flavor of what we're talking about here.
Now, a very good example is Alsat al-Dabi, which is the lunar mention of Capricorn, which of course was very interesting, I think, Capricorn, because it's the end of everything. It's associated with death, and it's my lunar mention. Now, you see this, so we have these three levels, and that's important. So it's spiritual, psychological, and also very tangible. Now, what is Capricorn? Capricorn is this goldfish, which I think is a fascinating image, but what the hell does it mean? And that's this whole story of this Pan, this god of the woods, enjoying all the nice things, and suddenly there's Typhon. And Typhon is a monster, and one of the ways he's depicted is that he's completely built out of snakes, his whole body. Now, the snake is of course duality. That will end. Duality will end, because necessarily it cannot go on. So this is death. That's the symbolism of Typhon. And then Pan is very much afraid, and he flies, and he turns himself into a fish, because he jumps into the river, and then he escapes. Now, that is that you go from a very earthly state, symbolized by this goat part, towards a spiritual state, because the fish, Christ is Ichthos, the fish, and we have the fishes at the end of the zodiac. So this is where it all again flows out into the spiritual. So the fish is always an indication of okay, we have to do with something spiritual here. So there's change under great fear and pressure, that you have to make the step, otherwise it's over. And that's another step out of matter in another phase. And for my personally, I have experiences very, very concretely in the form of an illness, which was suddenly there and life threatening, and that was really a Capricornian situation. And well, obviously I got out of it, but of course this triggered some changes, and also on the spiritual field. So all these myths connected with the lunar mention, they are not only spiritual and psychological. They do this very very concretely in your life. It brings these situations. You come into this mythological story, and so that's the same thing with stars. And lunar mentions are actually star mentions, star houses, and therefore they bring this mythology, which is on all the three levels of the cosmos.
When I was reading your book, it occurred to me that for those who remember Aesop's fables in their childhoods, those fables all had a moral lesson.
Yes.
So, there were stories that were told to the children to say, look, if you if you do certain things, this will happen. If you do certain things, that will happen.
Yeah,
And I'm just thinking about the grasshopper and the ant come to mind. You know, if
yeah,
you just spend your life having a lovely time and never really work, there are going to come times when you can't just live off the fat of the land. You have to have something stored, and
yeah,
you haven't
right.
actually put the effort in. You're going to struggle. You're going to find it harder to withstand hard times. So so I was thinking, in some respects, that the stories attached to the constellations and the zodiac are like morality tales, but for the spirit. You know, this
Absolutely.
reminder that we are mortal beings, but we are not only mortal beings, and that if we forget that we are more than mortal beings,
We
then
fall down in Hellespont.
yeah, exactly. We're in.
That's yeah, and that's very interesting what you say, because so the lunar mansions connected to the constellations, and the constellations are structured are stars, of course, but these stars, they're little suns, and you probably know this image of the sky cupola, which is pierced, and at the other side is the fire of God. It's limitless. And what we see as stars are these little holes. So that means if you look at it from this side, it means that the light we see through the stars and their constellation are return passes to God. And well, our sun is, of course, the obvious symbol of the divine. But the stars are really little suns. So they all, and that's what mythology is, and that's exactly what you say. They're all like instructive stories, what to do to get back for everybody. For it depends on your lunar mansion, which one is for you. That's very individual, because the moon every day it's in another mansion. So yes, that's absolutely it. These are instructions. These are spiritual instructions, but also psychological and even very concrete instructions what to do.
So could we say that if we're looking at each of the 12 signs, we're looking at the material challenges that are presented to each of them, and that each needs to overcome in order to return to source?
Yes, yes, and I think that the planets are more the material and concrete circumstances of life. Well, in traditional astrology, so if you have your Saturn in Cancer, bad luck. You cannot change that. That will not work. That's very straight. But if we come to the mythical level, and with stars and mentions, we are on the mythical level. Then there's more choice. So then you can make choices. So, and that is then your path out of matter. And you will also know this magnificent, I think, totally fundamental image of this model of the spheres, which summarizes the whole relation between everything. Then you have the stars in the lunar mansion, which are in the star sphere, of course, because they are stars and constellations, just under the zodiac. Now, the zodiac says this is God's plan, and we'll do it this way: 4 elements, 3 modes. That's the plan. But that's very much a potential. And then under it come the first at the moon level, not the sun level, the moon level. So becoming more concrete in earthly circumstances. Okay, we have 28 passes back to me. And under that are the planets, and they're very much down there already. And I say, okay, that's how it will be for you, and that this is good for you. Of course, there's nothing of determinism in it. Well, you can say Saturn in Cancer, you can't do anything about that, but that's, you cannot change the condition of the planet, but you can make choices for the good thing in your chart, of course. There's a lot to choose also in a traditional analysis of a chart.
I think that, you know, why I find this so compelling, because it's beyond interesting. It's almost like I'm looking at it and I can't stop looking at it.
Yes, that's
Because,
great.
and the reason I find this so compelling is that it's another level on which to read a chart.
Yes.
Because, okay, we can read a chart and understand it in terms of personality and the psyche of the individual. And as we know, we're reading a chart and looking at what's happening in relation to that chart with transits, progressions, etc., to help people grow and make sense of their
Yes.
life.
Yes.
But I think this is almost like an ancient form of, dare I say it, evolutionary or karmic astrology, because what we're saying is, and by the way, while you're here on this earth, encoded in your chart are the spiritual lessons that you are meant to learn. And I know that we do that anyway when we're reading a chart and looking at the challenges that people have, etc. But this is explicitly saying you come here, and if you are a Leo, be careful you don't get lost in pride.
Yeah.
Because if you get lost in pride,
Yes.
you're lost, and you're going to find it so much harder to get back.
Right.
Uh, and
Yes.
you look at it like that and you think, wow, that's quite an interesting way of looking at a chart. It's very compelling, I feel, and I think adds more nuance to what we might already be doing in terms of karmic or evolutionary astrology.
I think so. You could well compare it with that. Yes, absolutely. I think so. And I think the interesting thing is that you have such a, well, you have this 28-fold more detailing, and but this is your fundamental story.
And I think,
Well, maybe modern and traditional are a bit different because, in traditional astrology, we wouldn't focus too much on the solar sign, and that's of course a bit of a difference. We would rather take, well, at least in my, that would be my option, look at the moon and the lunar mention.
well, I think this is again making me think differently. It's opening up a different perspective, because what we're looking at here is we're being invited to think more about the stories around the zodiac itself, because
Yeah.
we get very caught up with the planets, and we're very good at saying, okay, the sun in this sign means this, and Saturn in that sign means that, and we have a really good understanding of that. But if we add the actual stories of the signs themselves,
Yes.
that is yet another layer to the
Absolutely.
story of the chart.
Yes. Then you can recognize the story of your life in a way. And then the lunar mansion is the main myth, but of course you have other stars in your chart which are active, and there are also myths and stories which are important, and that's really, you can see, okay, what do I really have to do on the bit of a higher level, not how are things, but what am I meant, what was made, what does cosmos or the origin want to say to me? From you have to do this, and this will come on your path, and you have to cope with that. But
Yeah.
also the beauty of the dimensions and the stars is that it presents the problem in a way, but also the way out. Always, it's always in there. That's why it's a return path. That's why it is a myth. That's what mythology is. Otherwise, it's I used to read these books by, I think Robert Grace wrote a book on mythology. Oh yeah. And then Hercules did that, and then that. Oh well, that's interesting. You don't understand what it means, so you have to make this symbolic translation, and then you see, oh, okay, that's killing the line is killing your ego pride, and okay, so you suddenly understand what it all is, and that's actually quite a simple translation to do. This symbol with when we have two, this is always the two polarities, and it comes back and back, and that's interesting. But as soon as you see two, okay, this is two polarities. Oh, and in Pisces is spiritual. Okay, so we have this spiritual polarity, and spiritual means going back to the spirit. Oh, we are in the end, and the two polarities are coming together. Therefore we have this core tying them together, which is quite mysterious as a symbol. And then by this quite simple, I can say, almost standard translation, you will find the meaning. And this of course, there's always a kind of feeling and intuition in it, but that's not so intuitive at all. You can be sensitive to symbols or not, but that's actually quite a standard translation. Fish is spiritual, but that's it. And water is desire, and seawater is raw desire, and sweet water is controlled desire. Well, these are all these simple images which always mean the same thing. And then you understand suddenly that Aquarius has this jar filled with sweet water. That's the key. He's done it. He's the most human sign there is. That's a very good reputation. That's because he has controlled this in his jar is sweet water. He has gone through the process. And the fascinating thing is there in the lunar mansion cycle, you have 3 Aquarius houses. And you see this tuk, 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 going through the process of distilling the water, of controlling the desire. And at the end, he pours out the water into the mouth of the southern fish. Which is the mouth of the southern fish, is from al-Hud, Arabic for the mouth of the fish, and connected with the birth of Christ. Because if the water is distilled and controlled, and then it leads to the spiritual rebirth. So these are actually quite simple symbolic images, which always refer to the same thing.
So looking at the myths around the signs, how far back do you reckon that they go? Because some of this is making me think of Egyptian mythology.
I have no idea historically, but I think that it was it's very difficult to say something about that. I'm very critical about the usual way of writing about old times. Well, my idea is, but is mythically that and that's the story, the Jewish story is astrology, including everything was given to the son of Adam in the Garden of Eden. So that's a symbolic way, or maybe a not so symbolic way, to say the whole of astrology is given, and it was revealed instead of, I don't know exactly, but I cannot connect it really to something really very historical or dates or
Okay.
well, I don't know exactly how this. Of course, the Jews had a lot to do with the Egyptians, so there's certainly a kind of connection there, but it seems to be coming all from the Jewish side in a way. I mean, this is of course, well, look around you, it's always about the Jews, and yeah, well, it's a very, very central story, and well, see, in the Bible you can find so much astrological symbolism. It's so this historical, I don't know, but they were, you will, in a way, it spread and they were used in all kinds of traditions, but about the origin, I think it was revealed in a way, and I can't, well, well, everybody will have his own thoughts about how things can
Yes,
be
indeed.
viewed.
Well, there, just looking at the stories themselves, it's made me think about a lot of hermetic principles that
Yes,
that are, it's very clear that there are hermetic principles here. So it's interesting that you're looking at the Judeo tradition and as well. And I think obviously hermetic principles permeate um, Judeo-Christian, and of course all the ancient cultures of Greece and Rome and Egypt. So um, lots of food for thought there, Oscar.
absolutely.
But I think that the thought with which we will leave the audience today is a reminder that astrology is a gift, and I think none of us would argue with that.
Yes, that's a very nice way to end it. Yeah. It's
So
a
thank you
gift.
very much. Thank you very much. The book that we have been discussing is called The Lunar Mansion Guide. I'll be putting a link to that in the description box. And Oscar, if people want to contact you to find out more about your work, how do they do that?
Um, they can, well, the best way is, I think, to mail directly to me. Maybe you can put my email address in
Yep, I
somewhere.
can share that.
That's the
That
best. Well, when I give my site, it's in, the name is a bit Dutch, so I'm afraid people won't find it. And
one
if you
find it.
search
Well,
for it from England, probably you don't get it.
but
So
I
it's better
that's
to send a direct mail, I think.
okay. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Oscar. I'll be putting the your email address in the description box. And,
Okay.
and thank you all for watching. Goodbye.
Okay. Bye bye.